Let's build Ichigo Kurosaki from Bleach as a playable character in Dungeons & Dragons. This time we're updating him for 2024 because I did already build him and mistakenly said that he had a bunch of abilities, but really he's only got a couple. And while that build generally still holds up, there's definitely some major changes that we're going to make here because there's a lot of great new options in 2024. And I wound up jumping through a lot more hoops for this build, which took a bit more work. But if you appreciate this stuff or you like anything relating to this video, make sure to subscribe. It really helps this channel. Or interacting with this video in any way, shape, or form, just boost the algorithm to help this video overall. But first, let's go ahead and start with the species. We're not going to be going with a human or a reborn. We're going to be going with a Kalishtar. This particular species is all about the union of people with renegade spirits from the plane of dreams, which seems to fit really well in the world of Bleach. This species gives you the feature Dual Mind, giving you advantage on all your wisdom saving throws. You have mental discipline, so you have resistance to psychic damage. You have mind link, so you can kind of speak telepathically when you need to. And you have other features that kind of sever you from dreams and gives you an additional language. But beyond that, we also get to choose a background. And with the new backgrounds in 2024, there's not quite as many options, but you are a substitute Soul Reaper, and not everybody really buys into that idea initially, so we're going to go with the background Charlatan. This gives us proficiency in Sleight of Hand and Deception, and it gives us the Skilled feat. So we get 3 skill proficiencies from this, so we'll choose Acrobatics, Insight, and Intimidation. Then this also boosts up some ability scores, focusing on our Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma, and speaking of those ability scores, we're going to have some that look like this. Really focusing mostly on our Charisma, even though I know everybody called me out in the comments in the last video that he's actually pretty smart too, but I also need a few points into Strength for a few requirements we need to meet later. Then as far as a starting class, in the original build, I went with Warlock right away, but there was some weird hoops to jump through because we had not enough strength to wield a great weapon and we didn't have proficiency with it. So essentially you were swinging a weapon you weren't good at swinging, but now we get to jump right in and we're still going to be starting with Warlock, but now Warlocks get to choose an Eldritch Invocation right away. And Pact boons have now been moved into Eldritch Invocations, so we can choose Pact of the Blade right away. And this gave us an update. So now Pact of the Blade still allows you to choose any simple or martial weapon as long as it's a melee weapon, and it becomes magical, and you can use your Charisma modifier for the attack and damage rolls. So now you have your giant sword that you can summon into existence, because we're going to use a great sword. You're proficient with it right away, and you can use your Charisma modifier for the attacks. And you also get some spell casting from being a Warlock. And as far as some cantrips, grab stuff like Booming Blade to hit really hard with your sword, Sword Burst to swing your sword all around, or things like Eldritch Blast for the one other major ability that you have early on, which is your Getsugo Tensho, which is basically your only real ranged attack, so having Eldritch Blast to recreate that is kind of helpful. Then as far as first level spells, you're pretty aware of spiritual pressure, so grab Detect Magic and also Hex to amp up your damage really early on. Then instead of jumping into second level of Warlock, we're going to do a really quick dip into one other class, jumping into the 2014 version of Fighter. There's a reason we're jumping into the 2014 version, but I'll explain that later. We just want to do a 1 level dip really quick because you don't have a lot of armor class, and we want to make sure you have some armor class. We don't have a lot of dexterity to back us up, and we had to put a bunch of points in strength, so we had to juggle some scores. And because of that, I want to make sure we get access to medium armor, and jumping into Fighter gives us that. Now, obviously, Ichigo doesn't necessarily wear medium armor, but we do see him with stuff where he's covered in sort of bones, which can be medium armor, and shoulder pads pretty regularly, so you know what, we'll just say he can wear medium armor. This also allows us to choose a fighting style right at first level, so we're going to grab defense, boosting our armor class by +1. We get second wind, so as a bonus action we can regain some health equal to 1d10 plus our fighter level, and then we're going to jump right back over to Warlock, because at second level of Warlock you get Magical Cunning, allowing you to spend 1 minute to regain half of your very limited Warlock spell slots, which you can only do once per long rest. Also at second level we get a couple more Eldritch Invocations, so we're actually going to grab Lesson of the First Ones, which is allowing us to grab an Origin feat, which is a limited number of feats that we can choose from, but we're going to grab the feat Tough, giving us an extra 2 hit points of health per level of this overall build. And to amp up the idea of having some extra health to help save us here and there, we're going to grab Fiendish Vigor, so you can cast False Life on yourself without expending a Warlock spell slot. This now doesn't really specify what the level of the spell slot is, so we can kind of assume that is the highest level Warlock spell slot you have access to, meaning that you have a pretty decent amount of temp HP you can call on command. But it also specifies that you automatically get the maximum amount from this spell. So anytime you want to spend the time to give yourself a shield of health, you got it. Then at 3rd level of Warlock, you get access to 2nd level spells as all of your Warlock casting upgrades, because you have very limited spell slots as a Warlock, but you can only cast them at the max level. So you always have a very powerful set of spells. And there's only 2 spells worth grabbing. We want to make sure we can activate our Flash Step ability, and it's basically just insane speed, but we can have the spell Misty Step to make up for this. And then, because you want to make sure your Zanpakuto can be activated and have that like black sword that's super intimidating, you want to grab the spell Shadow Blade. But also at 3rd level of Warlock, you get to choose a subclass. And we're going to jump into a semi-older subclass. And by semi-older, I just mean not from 2024. Because we're going to be grabbing a subclass from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. And that's the Undead Warlock subclass. And this immediately gives us the feature, Form of Dread. And this is how we're going to very easily replicate when Ichigo goes into his hollow form. Because the Form of Dread allows you to transform into an absolutely terrifying creature for 1 minute as a bonus action, giving you temporary hit points equal to 1d10 plus your Warlock level. And once on each of your turns, when you hit a creature with an attack, they have to make a wisdom saving throw or they're frightened of you. And on top of everything else, you're immune to the frightened condition as well. Then at 4th level of Warlock, you get access to an ability score improvement. So we're going to go ahead and boost up our charisma by 2 points. And then at 5th level of Warlock, we get access to 3rd level spells. And there's a few really good ones here. We can grab Fly to make sure you can actually fly around in your hollow form, which is kind of a necessity sometimes. Grab Thunder Step for another quick flash step mixed with some damage, and make sure you can hit pretty darn hard by amping up your overall damage with any attack that you're doing. With the spell Spirit Shroud. So anytime you hit a creature within 10 feet of you, you can deal an extra 1d8 damage. And this spell has the ability to be upcast, increasing by 1d8 for every 2 levels above 3rd level casting. And that's especially effective because at this level, you also get a couple more Eldritch Invocations. One of those we're going to choose is Thirsting Blade. So now you can attack twice per action. And if you want, you can hit really hard with one of those attacks, with Eldritch Smite being your other Eldritch Invocation. So you can expend one of your Warlock spell slots to deal an extra 1d8 force damage. And depending on the level of the spell slot you use, you can deal an extra 1d8 per level of spell slot. And if the target you're hitting happens to be huge or smaller, it's knocked prone. Then at 6th level of Warlock, you get access to another feature from being an undead Warlock called Grave Touched. So now you don't have to eat, drink, or breathe, and when you hit somebody with an attack on your turn, you can change the damage type to necrotic, and you can roll 1 extra die when calculating all the damage you're dealing. And all the dice is really going to add up by the end of this build. Trust me, it's going to suddenly skyrocket in possibilities. Then at 7th level of Warlock, your spellcasting gets upgraded. So we're going to make sure you don't get knocked out too quickly with the spell Death Ward, so you can basically get knocked down to 0 hit points and it saves you from dying right away. And we'll also grab the spell Shadow of Moil, which is very relevant for the newer Bleach series. It wreathes you in flame-like shadows, and if any creature within 10 feet of you hits you with an attack, those shadows lash out and deal 2d8 necrotic damage to them. And on top of everything else, you just happen to be resistant to radiant damage. Also at this level, you get another Eldritch Invocation, and because you pretty consistently wind up talking to the dead, we'll grab Whispers of the Grave, allowing you to cast Speak with Dead without expending a Warlock spell slot. Then at 8th level of Warlock, we get another ability score improvement, so we're going to go ahead and max out that Charisma. And then at 9th level of Warlock, you get a new feature from the 2024 version of Warlock called Contact Patron. This might not particularly affect Ichigo directly, but it's still a feature worth noting. It makes it so you always have the spell Contact Other Plane prepared, and you can use it once without using a spell slot, and it allows you to contact your patron. This could be you just reaching out to the Soul Society. Also at 9th level, we get another Eldritch Invocation, so we're going to grab the invocation Life Drinker, which used to be kind of unreasonably powerful, but now it's still decently powerful. So once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack, you can deal an extra 1d6 necrotic damage. It can also be psychic or radiant if you want, but we're dealing a lot of necrotic, so might as well just stick with one style. And when you do so, you can actually drink up some of that life, which is a big change to this invocation in 2024. It also allows you to spend one of your hit dice and regain whatever you rolled plus your constitution modifier, just like you would on a short rest, but it allows you to do it directly from an attack. Then the last thing you get at 9th level of Warlock is an upgrade to your spellcasting again. Now we're at 5th level spells for Warlocks. So to make sure you can use Flash Step as consistently as possible, grab the spell Far Step. It's just like Misty Step, but you can concentrate on it and you can use it over and over again. Also, I was going to mention you should probably grab Hold Person earlier, but you're just going to wind up swapping it out anyway, so grab Hold Monster instead. It's far more effective, and it used to have a limitation that it couldn't target undead creatures, which was super weird, but now it works on anything. Then at 10th level Warlock, you get another feature from your undead patron called Necrotic Husk. You gain resistance to necrotic damage, and if you're in your form of dread, you're actually immune to necrotic damage. And on top of that, if you get reduced to 0 hit points, you can actually be reduced to 1 hit point instead. And it kind of forces you to explode with necrotic deathly energy, dealing 2d10 plus your Warlock level to any creature within 30 feet of you of your choice. You have to use your reaction to do all this stuff, and it costs you 1 level of exhaustion, but it's still kind of this cool, like, last ditch effort of just, I'm about to die, I'm going to explode type of thing. And then you still wind up at 1 hit point. Then at 11th level of Warlock, you get a Mystic Arcanum, which is like another spell you can cast, but this time it's above 5th level because Warlock spell slots max out at 5th level, but this is a 6th level spell that you can cast once per long rest because all other Warlock spell slots recharge on a short rest. So we're just going to grab the spell Eye Bite. Nothing else really fits thematically, but Eye Bite at least allows you to scare the crap out of your enemies if you need to. Then at 12th level of Warlock, we get another Eldritch Invocation, and they added a new one here. So I'm going to grab Devouring Blade. It's a direct upgrade to Thirsting Blade, but you still have to take Thirsting Blade in order to be able to have access to it. So now you get another extra attack, meaning you can attack 3 times per action. And that's going to be especially useful because also at this level, you get an ability score improvement, and we're going to take a feat. And part of the reason that we put those points into strength is so we can get the feat Great Weapon Master. This now has a requirement of 13 strength. It also boosts your strength by 1 point, so now we have 14 strength, so it's slightly more usable in case you need your strength modifier. It's been adjusted in its save or suck mentality where it reduced your accuracy but boosted your damage. Now you don't have any reduction to your accuracy, but you do still get a boost to your damage, but the amount it's increased is just equal to your proficiency modifier, which is still a decent increase. And with the amount of attacks that you now have at 12th level of Warlock, that's going to add up pretty quickly. And then on top of that, if you happen to crit with an attack or reduce a creature to 0 hit points with an attack, you get 1 more attack as a bonus action, meaning that you can have 4 attacks overall. But we're still going to improve that pretty soon, because now we're going to jump into our multi-class. In the old build, I brought Warlock all the way up to 17th level to get Blade of Disaster, which is a pretty badass spell, I will admit, but I think this build might fit a little better. And the order of these levels do actually matter because there's some things you can get from 2014 that you can't get in 2024 and vice versa. So we're going to be jumping back over to fighter levels now. At 2nd level of fighter, you get Action Surge, allowing you to take an extra action once per short or long rest, meaning that now you can do a double action to attack 6 times, which is going to be pretty powerful with how this all stacks up. At 3rd level of fighter, you get a martial archetype, which is a subclass, as how it was named in 2014. And we're going to take one of the subclasses that was originally made for Critical Role, which is Echo Knight. This is something we actually used in the original build for this character, but it's pretty awesome. It allows you to make basically an echo of yourself, which we kind of play up as being you doing a lot of flash steps really quickly, seeing kind of doubles of yourself from the enemy's perspective. You can then attack or make opportunity attacks from your position or your echo's position as if you're attacking from all around them at once. And you can have this ability called Unleash Incarnation. So if you have your Echo active, you can then get an additional attack as part of your attack action from your Echo's position. You can only do this a number of times equal to your Constitution modifier though, but that still means that you can attack 4 times as your action, 4 times as your action surge, and if you happen to crit or manage to take out a creature during that entire time, you get 1 more attack as your bonus action. Then we're going to go ahead and take 1 more level in Fighter. This gives us an ability score increase, so we're going to boost up our dexterity by 2 points because that rounds it out and basically makes it so if we're using medium armor, we have the maximum amount of armor class we can get. And then, because we already have extra attack, we don't need any more levels in Fighter. So we're actually going to do another multi-class. And because we have so much charisma and we have enough strength to just coincidentally be able to pull this off, because I really just wanted the strength for the Great Weapon Master, now we can jump over to Paladin as well. This gives us the feature Lay on Hands right away, so we get a giant pool of healing to be able to heal ourselves or others if we need to, which is probably Orihime's deal, but you know, if you need to heal yourself in a pinch, you can do that. You get some spell casting, but we're only going to be grabbing basically every smite ability we can get our hands on. And then at 2nd level of Paladin, we get a weapon mastery. So we're going to go ahead and get weapon mastery with a greatsword, which gives us graze, allowing us to deal damage even when we miss with an attack. And we're also going to get the other weapon mastery in longsword, because you do wield a longsword occasionally. And that has the weapon mastery feature, Sap, forcing disadvantage on that creature's next attack roll. Then at 2nd level of Paladin, you can choose a fighting style. You can also choose Blessed Warrior, but we don't care about that. We're going to choose an actual fighting style, and we're going to get the new and improved Great Weapon Fighting. This is going to be so powerful for us, I cannot even emphasize it enough. Because now it's not that you re-roll damage if you roll a 1 or a 2, it's that you now have a minimum of 3 on the damage dice. And because we can smite with our Eldritch Smite, we can add additional damage from our Undead Warlock stuff, and we get additional damage from Life Drinker on top of everything else. That's a lot of damage that's going to stack up as part of your melee attack. Not to mention, you can now double smite, because you are required to use a bonus action for smiting with the 2024 version of Paladin, but the Eldritch Smite doesn't require that, so you can still double smite if you need to. And the new minimum for every single one of those dice is now 3. That's a heck of a lot of dice. And speaking of smiting, also at this level you get Paladin Smite, which allows you to automatically have the Divine Smite ability prepared, and you can cast it a certain number of times for free. Then at 3rd level of Paladin you get Channel Divinity, which you can spend on things like Divine Sense to sense certain types of creatures around you, like undead or fiends. But also at this level you get a Paladin subclass, which I was kind of torn because Ichigo has a very firm idea of what he declares as justice, but a lot of that kind of results in vengeance, so that's what we're going to go with, an Oath of Vengeance Paladin. And we can use our Channel Divinity for a Vow of Enmity, allowing us to have advantage on all attacks against a creature that we select. And if you wind up taking that creature out, you can wind up moving that Vow of Enmity to somebody else. And then finally, at 4th level of Paladin, you get another ability score improvement. But since we're at a high enough level, we can actually get an Epic Boon. And part of the reason I did everything in this order is because if we took the 2014 version of Fighter to this level, we wouldn't be able to get an Epic Boon because they don't have access to those from 2014. So we jumped over to this to make sure we still had that. And the only reason we did 2014 version of Fighter is because the 2024 version doesn't have access to Echo Knight. But besides all that, we want to make sure we grab the Boon of Dimensional Travel. So now if you attack somebody, you can wind up teleporting as part of that attack action as soon as it's done. You teleport 30 feet, and it's just another way to incorporate our flash step. And then on top of everything else, you get 1 point into whatever ability score you want. So let's just go ahead and throw it into intelligence just so we can round that out. And that maxes out this overall character. I had a little more fun with it this time, being able to dive into more random stuff because I had to do a 3-way multi-class, and trying to figure out how 2014 would mix with 2024 stuff was a bit of difficulty, but I managed to pull it off, I think. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below, especially if you saw my original Ichigo build, which build you like better, because the other one really had to lean into the Hexblade Warlock, which felt like I was kind of missing out on a couple of things from the hollow form, even though we did have a couple spells to try and recreate it. But anyways, I'd like to know what your thoughts are. If you want access to the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below, where you can get access to all of my builds, and you can get access to some of the builds and videos that have actually gotten taken down from YouTube due to some copyright issues, thanks to the no fair use existing in Japan. But if you want all that and you want to help support this channel, you can wind up being just as awesome as some of these people scrolling on by. Or the especially awesome player character patrons: Vicart, Craig Withy, Alexander White, Ravelord, Nicole Biliak, The Holy 999, Christopher Sams, Dark of Skies, Barrows Cruel, Felix Ulick, The 10586, Kevin Shirley, That Funny Man 57, CGC 2014, Panda Milkshake, Karke Kitsune, Decker Joint, Z13, Viral Naravar, Daniel Calvin, and Salvador. Then there's the Dungeon Master level patrons that I play D&D with over on Twitch: Brian Dunn, Dante Dixon, T Brownie, Julia B. De Oliveira, Shane Gilroy, Daniel Sattler, CommanZX, GameSteak, and Devin Happy. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, especially if you want to play as Ichigo Kurosaki in a more updated version of D&D and just smite the crap out of your enemies in every way imaginable, whether you're in hollow form or not.